My name is Okara Yby. Oka means it's the place where people live, it's a house. And Okara, it's around the house. And Yby means earth. I live in Niterói, in Rio de Janeiro state, and I grew up here. My family, more specifically my indigenous family, because I'm mixed, but I identify more with my indigenous family because I look like them, and that's where I feel that my ancestry is stronger. My grandmother was very ashamed of who she was, being indigenous and being from a region that we call Nordeste, that usually has a lot of prejudice. So she just did her best to forget, but we can't forget completely because this is how we look. And I think our ancestors talk to us somehow. And I think what I can say about colonization and like gender issues and sexuality issues, it's very explicit that colonizers, the Europeans that came here, they had a way of understanding the world. They had their morals and they imposed that. They were very shocked with our non-monogamy, the fact that our relationships could end, because it's very important for monogamy that things are eternal, that there was no Christ wasn't a part of our lives, so spirituality was also colonized. I think it's more like a perception of the world. It's like a kind of a connection with cosmos. Or you can say spirituality is in everything. We were too close to Earth. That's a problem. And also gender was colonized. The way we lived, the fact that we weren't exactly binary was a problem. But I have two hypotheses where we can follow. The first is from Okara Yby, that wrote the book The Invention of Women. She shows us how her people didn't have gender in their language, in their daily lives. There was no social function based on body, and it is possible that some indigenous people live like that and gender was inserted. And there is this other researcher called Rita Segato. She thinks that indigenous people had some kind of references of male and female or masculine and feminine, but they weren't as rigid. They weren't exactly binary, it's more something dual. I have a very interesting book called Existe Índio Gay? It's a question. The question means, are there gay indigenous people? And from an anthropologist called Estevão Fernandes from Brazil. The cover of the book, it's a painting some European did about indigenous people, and they're like demons. The way they perceived what was happening. And I think to talk about gender, sexuality, relationships for indigenous people is being able to accept that you won't understand everything. Michel Foucault, he's very famous. And he talks about practices becoming identities. That's what Western logic does. People, they don't just have sex, they become homosexuals, bisexuals, and other things. And I think that can be a problem nowadays, because I know we need rights, and to have rights we need to give names to things. I have this term, it's ancestralidade indígena. Translating it would be like ancestry. So I use that ancestry for indigenous people. So it's not that I think that those registers, those people who defy gender binary were necessary trends, because that is a Western and modern concept. And if we don't know, I think we should just let it be, not try to name it. And if we do that, I do think it's enough just to know that those people could exist. That defying gender binary isn't like something postmodern. So this is the other book, and it's called Antiespecismos Subversivos, Construções a partir das Dissidências, which the translation can be like subversive anti-specism. I wrote a text about how can indigenous people dialogue. Actually, how can anti-specism and veganism dialogue with indigenous people? I think the effort has to come from that place, not on contrary. This is a letter that one colonizer ruled to another one. Here in Brazil, we also have those people who sin a lot, just like in Africa. And for example, there are these women, they're able to fight, and if you call them women, there's a chance they will try to kill you with arrows. These people, they thought they were women, but it's things that were associated to men or masculine things. And between women, they would wear men's hair, and they would go to war and hunt and marry other women. So this passage tells us that there were like these men who were passive men, and they had like their own places where people could go there to have sex with them. They call it public tents. But sometimes if they were angry, they could also use this word tibira or tivira, which the word that I said that means anal sex, to like offend someone. Here in Brazil, we started to use the word tibira. It's one of many words we can find in indigenous history, but tibira is like it's an important person in our history because it's one of the first persons registered in like written, and this person actually was killed and with a cannon. This person was exploded. What we know about this person is that they were from Tupinambá ethnicity. They had like a male body, but a very feminine appearance. The word Tibira comes from a word in Tupi that means ass. So it's kind of a nickname. It's a word that comes from a specific place, but we're using like an umbrella word. When I'm with indigenous persons, people, we can use Tibira or many other words. There are other words, or we can use no word, because I think the important thing is that we can find a way of talking about the way we are, not straight, not cis, and connecting with our ancestry. That's the point. If when we're dialoguing with the state, it's easier to be non-binary, to be trans, to be LGBT, then that's it. I don't think it's really about the word. I think it's about being able to exist and being together, because it's a very collective identity. We can only be indigenous if we have our people.